Hey kids, thanks for joining me in the garage again today. We're going to be putting this drill press head back together today, and I think I got all the pieces, got some new bearings. I think I even have some pieces I'm not quite sure where they go yet, so I might have extra pieces. So we'll see, and we'll get this all figured out. So like, subscribe, comment down below. You can always follow me on Instagram at Weekend Wrench Turner. Let's get started. All right, as you can see, I've got all these pieces laid out here. I think the first thing I want to do is kind of get this spindle put together. So we got to, if you remember, if you watched the first episode where I started taking this apart, there's a bearing, there's a thrust bearing that goes in this little pocket here, then a bearing that goes on top of that, that's actually pressed on to this spindle here. And then there's also a bearing that goes on the top here. So I think that's where we'll start first. We'll kind of get that put together here. And then there's also a couple of bearings that go on this, I guess it's the drive for the spindles. So let's get started with that here. Let's first, I need to get this little ring off. Get that slid off. And so if I remember correctly, I think these all are the same. 6205, 6205, 6205. Yeah, so the bearing that goes on this end here and the two bearings that go on the spindle drive are the same size, so it shouldn't matter. So this will get pressed onto the spindle end there, and then I've got these thrust bearings that go right in the top here. So let's see if I can't. So this should just drop right down in there, just like that. There we go. So if you think about this, if I actually first press this bearing in there, when I press the spindle end, that shouldn't affect this race because it'll be up against this thrust bearing. So I think that's where I'll start here, is maybe one a little bit bigger than that. There we go. That looks good. I'm just going to take this down the concrete, something solid, get a piece of wood to set that on, and then let me pound that in real quick. All right. So that is in there, and that runs pretty good. So I think the next thing is so the way that works, so this in here, just, that's actually setting down on that. So when I press on it, I'm not going to tear up this outer race here. I'm actually going to go ahead and do this the right way and go over to the press, and we'll get that on there. So I'm going to set this aside for now, and I'll do that also on here. But I think until then we can get everything else set up properly. So let's go ahead and get some of these other bits in here on the press. All right, so we'll set these aside, and then I think what we'll do here, first thing, we'll just kind of do some of the easy low-hanging fruit here. We'll get these pins put in. They just slide in the rear here. And then what I have is these had these little kind of rinky-dink kind of metal clip things. And so I'm actually going to put a little E-clip on these, make it a little secure. That'll help keep that nice lubed up. Now the trick is, let me move these out of the way here. just to get in there and get that clip in there. Yeah, I mean, suppose that fits-ish. I wonder if I could slide it in this other direction. Might be able to, yeah. Looks smarter, not harder. Okay. This one in. This is the plate, these hold that plate that the motor goes on. And then there's this little piece here that actually does the motion. So let's get a little more grease on here too. So that goes in here, and then you can crank on it to tighten, basically tighten the belts. So, all right. So then what happens here is there's a little pin that goes down in there, but I'm going to put a roll pin on it. It's this, you know, I might just, this is the pin, the original pin. Maybe I'll just go ahead and hammer that home here. Well, that might not have been the right pin. That's the only pin I got. Maybe just down a little too much. Well, that kind of sucks. So I'm going to take that E-clip off. All right, let's just reassess, make sure I'm putting this in there correctly. Yes, I can see down the hole. All right, now back to our original idea of putting a little roll pin in there, and I think this one right here should do the trick. There, that's much better. So yeah, I'll press this, we'll go over to the press here, press that spindle in, and then also press the other bearing in on the other side, and then we can also get the bearings, two bearings on this side here. There's also the two bearings that go in on the smaller wheel as well. So that's what a couple of these are. So there's 6202 and then 6203. So these go in here, and then this one, the 6203, goes inside here. So we're gonna go get the press set up, and we'll start there. All right, we got the spindle set up here in the press. So let's get this on here. Get it all centered up here. So just to reiterate, since that bearing is sitting on top of a thrust bearing, this, you know, pushing down on this spindle isn't going to really damage that bearing because it's being supported on the back side by that thrust bearing. So we'll go ahead. Shouldn't take a whole lot of juice to get it down there either. So a lot better than hitting it with a hammer though. So the next thing we need to do is get that the two bearings on the spindle drive. We'll get those in there. So I think that looks pretty good. Seems to be moving just fine. So perfect. All right, the next thing I gotta do is get this upper bearing on the spindle. Do this before I put that drive bearing on the spindle drive bearings. And so what I've got here is a 27 millimeter 3/4 socket that'll slide right over. Again, you don't want to just press down on the outer. You want to press down kind of across the whole thing. And so this has some support on that inner part so that you're not tearing the bearing apart. And then on top of that, we'll place this little guy and then our press plate over the top of that. And we'll get this all lined up here. And then we'll start pressing. All right, I think that's in there. At least that's as far as I can go there. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? All right, next thing is to do that, the 2 drive bearings for the spindle drive. Right, we got this drive, the spindle drive unit. You can see it's kind of got the little teeth in there. And so the way we're going to do this is we're just going to set the bearing down here and press that down into that hole again, so that inner race is being supported as we press, and so we don't ruin that inner race. So I've got it on this kind of small little squares on these Harbor Freights. Gonna have to be a little careful that they don't flip up, but I don't think this is going to take a whole lot of force to get these pressed down. So yeah, not a whole lot of force. Okay, I need to lift up. I don't think I quite have that centered on that hole here. Give it a bigger target there. There we go. Okay. All right, so this one has 2 bearings. There's the first one, and then there's a little plastic spacer that goes over it. And then we got the second bearing. So this one I'm not going to actually have to worry about pressing it all the way through. Should just top out at the top. Yeah, there, that plastic there is in there, nice aligned. Yeah, like a dream. All right, so I think here we got the bearings we got to press in for the drive wheel. So let's do that. All right, so I've got a 23 millimeter socket that just goes right in there like that. And so we're gonna put these bearings in there. Again, these, as you're putting them in, you want to support them on the outside, since that's where the force is going to be applied on these. So just be able to drop those in, set this on there, keep that nice and centered up. Not quite centered on it. There, now it's centered. There we go. I think that's in. And then the second bearing, same size. There it goes. There. So on this one here, there's a little ring that goes on the inside, and so we'll need to goes right in there. Probably hard to see, so we'll go back to the bench and get that in there. Otherwise, we're pretty much ready to rock on this. All right, here we are back at the bench. So one thing I did with this little this is the kind of the idler pulley, I suppose, is I went ahead and inserted this piece. I didn't show that while putting it on the press, but we do got a couple of snap rings that we got to get in there. So let's do that first. And so it's this one of these. So this, as you can see, I kind of, tore that up a little bit. So, whatever, should still work. That should just snap in here. Probably don't need snap ring pliers for this. So that's in there. And then we've got this smaller one that just fits. I think I will use the old snap ring pliers on that one just because I'm lazy. There we go. So that just prevents that from coming out. That goes up on this head. It kind of sits right here. Once you've got the cover on, just helps to keep that belt tightened. So, all right. So next thing I think we can do, we do need to put this little retainer ring on here. Looks to me like it was right there. I think that's a 3mm. So let's get this. All right. So there we go. And so the next thing are going to be these snap rings. So this drive piece goes down in there, and there's a snap ring that fits down in there. You can kind of see down at the bottom there, and then one on the top. Let's see if this will sprung out somewhere. Sprung. This is going to be tricky, I think. There we go. So now we can put this dry spindle. So the way this works again, so that's the top, and then this will slide in there. It's got kind of a taper to it. So we'll slide this down in there. It should just, where this little brass hammer comes in handy. Voila. And so then another snap ring on the top, keep that from coming out. All right. Well, that's not going anywhere. Excellent. So let's see. Next thing I think is going to be putting the spindle in. So we'll just lay this on the side. And so a couple of things. Actually, let me flip this over so you can see. So there's this little nut here prevents the spindle from turning. So it comes in right here. So this is the where the chuck is, and then so this would be coming in like this, and then this just fits in that groove from this hole right here. That way you can make sure that it doesn't spin whenever you're drilling something. It'll keep that the quill from moving back and forth. So let's go ahead, we'll put that in. So there, I can feel that now. So now the spindle should just come right up in there. Oh, one thing too, before I put that in there, there's this kind of rubber pad. Keep it somewhat padded when that slams home from the spring. That's too far, back it off a half turn. There, now it fits in there. So you can see that keeps that from spinning there. So we'll put that on there now. All right. Spins nice and good. So let's, before I actually permanently install that, let's throw a little bit of grease on here. We'll put some right on there, come a little farther in, put some on here, get it all over our hands, some up here. We'll also put some on this other gear, but we'll go ahead and throw some on here as well. That's probably too much. Ugh. Now that we have it all over our hands, geez. Yeah. Now we can go ahead and slide this in. Smoosh. All right, next thing is we want to put in this little guy here. So this side here is where this goes. And so this will be the last thing we put on here. And so let's take these nuts off. Go ahead and grease this guy up. And then we got to kind of put it together. This little wedge that I have fell out when I was pulling it apart. So this slides on in this direction. And so then this little wedge here is where this set screw is. So I need to find a set screw that'll fit in there first. Yeah, so I don't have the right set screw, but I don't think that actually matters. This little thing sits in this groove here, and so I'm just gonna go ahead, throw this puppy on. So this little wedge here just fits right in that groove here. And then we can just slide this on here. And so you can see, and so that locks this in. So I'll have to get a M8 1.5 to go ahead and fit in there at some point. So now the other thing is, this had a little, and if you remember when I was tearing this apart, this has a little a pin that I cut out that'll kind of stop this from moving. And so I need to put a little roll pin in there as well. I think that'll work. I don't want to put it in there too far, but then at the same time, this has to be able to fit just a little above this line here. So let me grab the Dremel. That should be about right. Let me deburr that. All right, let's see if this all goes together here. Let me just set this back up. And that'll put a little bit of grease right in here. Alright, so now we got to put this on. So this you've got to basically twist so that you get a little bit of preload. And so as you think, you're pulling this way, so this is turning this way as the head is going down. That means you're going to have to turn this way to preload it. That way, you know, when you're pulling down, that'll spring back for you. So let's go ahead and get that on. I don't know if there's any, you know, maybe right about there. Probably good. So let's go ahead, we'll put this nut on here first, and then the lock nut on top of that. Now, this is just finger tight, and let me, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a wrench here and we'll snug that down. That should do her. All right, so now let's get these, you know, let's put a handle on it here. I do think that's everything on here. So now we just need to go put it back on the post. So let's do it. All right, time to get this thing up on the post here. So, you know, this should be a pretty quick and dirty operation. So, a couple of little screws on the side here. Got these little wheeler dealers that keep the engine in place when you're moving it in and out here. So we'll get those on. Pretty sure I put this one on backwards. There's a little flat spot, and that goes inboard. That way you can get a pair of pliers on it, really crank it down. I think that works really good. So that's all we've got for now. So, you know, the next time we're going to be redoing the motor. Obviously, we got to put the motor on, and we've got to get the belts and whatnot all on there. And so we're going to do that next time. We'll get the motor all cleaned up. So appreciate you watching. You know, if you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button. You know, hit the thumbs up as well. That helps out a lot. You can always follow me on Instagram at Weekend Wrench Turner. Thanks for watching. Keep on wrenching.